James stood at the massive window of the Galactic Council station, watching the colorful ships glide past like fish in a cosmic sea. Each vessel represented a different alien species, their designs as varied as the creatures who built them. Some looked like crystal spheres catching starlight, while others resembled giant leaves drifting through space. The human diplomat adjusted his simple gray uniform, feeling out of place among the flowing robes and shimmering garments worn by other species representatives. Even after 5 years as Earth's ambassador to the Council, he still felt like the primitive cousin at a family reunion. "Ambassador James," a soft voice called from behind. "The Council session will begin shortly." He turned to face Counselor Blue, whose semi-transparent body glowed with gentle patterns of light, a natural feature of her species. Like most advanced races in the Council, her people had evolved beyond the need for physical weapons, choosing instead to focus on art, science, and the pursuit of perfect harmony. "Thank you, Counselor," James replied with a polite nod. "I hope today's session will be more productive than yesterday's." Blue's lights flickered in what James had learned was their equivalent of a sympathetic smile. "Your species' eagerness for quick action is fascinating. But remember, the Council has maintained peace among 53 spacefaring civilizations for over 300 years through careful deliberation." James bit back a frustrated sigh. In Council terms, careful deliberation often meant talking about a problem until it either solved itself or got so bad they couldn't ignore it anymore. The Council chamber was a marvel of alien architecture, with walls that seemed to breathe and a ceiling that showed real-time images of every member world's sky. James took his seat at the human section, noticeably less decorated than the others. Most species viewed Earth's seat on the Council as a courtesy rather than a right. After all, humans had achieved faster-than-light travel only 30 years ago. The session began with its usual ceremony. The head speaker, a tall being made of what looked like living crystal, called for updates from the border regions. James noticed several representatives shifting uncomfortably in their seats, an interesting sight considering some didn't even have conventional bodies. "We have lost contact with 3 outposts in the Spiral Arm region," announced Representative Green, their leaf-like appendages trembling. "All attempts at communication have failed." Murmurs filled the chamber. Lost contact was rare in an age of quantum communication. "Perhaps their equipment malfunctioned," suggested another member, their metallic scales reflecting the artificial light. James leaned forward. 3 outposts at once. That seems unlikely." Several members turned to look at him with what he recognized as their species' version of disapproval. Humans were known for jumping to the worst conclusions. Their violent history made them paranoid, or so the others claimed. The human representative raises an interesting point. Counselor Blue said, her glow dimming slightly. "We should send an investigation team." "Investigation team approved," the head speaker announced after only 20 minutes of discussion, practically light speed by Council standards. As the session continued, James received a private message on his tablet. The details made his blood run cold. 2 more outposts had gone dark while they were talking. Whatever was happening out there, it was spreading. He looked around the chamber at the peaceful, advanced beings discussing proper investigation protocols and filing procedures. These were species that had evolved beyond warfare, beyond violence, beyond the concept of preparing for the worst. For the first time, James wondered if their advanced pacifism might prove to be a weakness rather than a strength. The humans weren't the most advanced species in the Council. They weren't the smartest, the most evolved, or the most peaceful. But they knew something these others had forgotten. Sometimes peace must be defended with force. As James drafted an urgent message to Earth Command, he couldn't shake the feeling that the galaxy might soon need humanity's primitive instincts more than anyone realized. 2 weeks after the Council meeting, James paced in the emergency command center aboard the station. The massive screens covering the walls showed a map of the galaxy, with growing dark spots marking the areas where contact had been lost. 15 outposts had now gone silent. "Show me the pattern again," he ordered. The computer highlighted the spread of darkness. It wasn't random. It moved like a wave, like something hunting. Counselor Blue floated into the room, her usual gentle glow now dim with worry. The investigation team reached the first outpost. She said quietly, "We received only one transmission." James turned to face her. What did they find? Nothing. Blue's light patterns shifted to show distress. No bodies, no signs of battle, no damage. The colony was simply empty. But before we lost contact, they sent this. The main screen flickered to life. The video showed an alien city, beautiful and intact, but completely deserted. Then the camera turned, and James felt his stomach drop. In the distance, a dark mass moved across the landscape. It wasn't solid. It seemed to shift and flow like oil and water. As they watched, the mass split into smaller parts that took shapes almost like animals, but wrong in ways that made the eye hurt to look at them. The team went silent 30 seconds after this transmission, Blue said. James grabbed his tablet and started typing furiously. "We need to call an emergency council session. Now." An hour later, the council chamber was full. The video played on repeat as representatives watched in horror. For the first time since James had joined the council, no one seemed interested in lengthy discussions. "What are they?" asked Representative Green, leaves shaking. "Some kind of hive mind species," James suggested. "Look how they move together, how they can split and reform." The head speaker's crystalline form sparkled with concern. "We must attempt peaceful contact. Perhaps they are simply curious about our worlds." Several members activated their defensive technologies. Force fields, energy barriers, and neural disruptors, the non-lethal weapons that had kept peace in the galaxy for centuries. "Those won't work," James said firmly, drawing surprised looks. "These creatures don't have individual minds to disrupt. They don't have bodies to hold back. Your peaceful technologies were designed to stop thinking beings without harming them. This is something else entirely. What do you suggest?" Blue asked, her glow pulsing with anxiety. "Surely you don't mean—" "We need weapons," James stated. "Real ones. The kind humans still make." The chamber erupted in shocked protests. The very idea of weapons designed to kill went against everything the council stood for. A new alert flashed across the screens. Another colony had gone dark, this one larger than the others. The image showed thousands of the dark creatures swarming through the streets. The peaceful residents had no defense against something that simply absorbed them. "They're not trying to communicate," James pressed. "They're feeding. Every colony they take makes them stronger, larger. My people have stories about things like this. We call them apex predators. And you don't negotiate with a predator that's hunting you." The council members looked at each other uncertainly. Centuries of peace had left them unprepared for something that didn't want to talk. "Even if we agreed," the head speaker said slowly, "none of our worlds remember how to fight. We evolved past it." James stood up straight. "Earth remembers. We never stopped preparing for threats like this. Let us help. Let us show you how to defend yourselves." The chamber fell silent as the council faced a terrible choice: maintain their peaceful principles and face extinction, or accept help from the humans they had long looked down on as violent and primitive. On the screens above them, another colony went dark. The Earth fleet arrived 3 days later. James watched from the council station as 30 warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel, their dark metal hulls standing in stark contrast to the elegant vessels of other species. At the center of the formation was the flagship Thunder, carrying Admiral Mary Thompson and Earth's response team. The council observation deck fell silent as the human ships took up defensive positions. Many of the alien representatives had never seen actual weapons of war before. The missile launchers, energy cannons, and fighter bays were as foreign to them as peace had once been to humanity. "Those are warships?" Counselor Blue asked, her glow flickering with a mix of fear and fascination. "Built only for fighting." James nodded. "Earth maintains a defense fleet. We hoped we'd never need it, but we always knew that hope isn't a strategy. Admiral Thompson's hologram appeared in the council chamber. She was a tall woman with short gray hair and eyes that had seen real combat. "Council members," she said, her voice firm but respectful. "I wish we were meeting under better circumstances." The head speaker stepped forward. "Admiral, we have never hosted a military fleet before. Some of our members are concerned." "With respect," Thompson replied, "you should be more concerned about the enemy that's eating your worlds." She waved her hand, and a tactical display appeared. The hive mind has consumed 23 colonies. At their current rate of expansion, they'll reach major population centers in less than 2 weeks. The display showed recordings from the Thunder's scout drones. The dark creatures had grown larger, now forming masses bigger than cities. They moved with terrible purpose, absorbing everything in their path. "How do you plan to stop them?" Representative Green asked. "Our strongest defensive technologies had no effect." Thompson's face hardened. "We fight fire with fire. Earth's weapons aren't designed to stun or disable. They're designed to destroy threats permanently." Several council members shifted uncomfortably. James saw blues glow dim to almost nothing. "We've analyzed the enemy's pattern," Thompson continued. "They're not just feeding randomly. They're learning, adapting, getting stronger with each world they take. But that also means they're getting more complex, more vulnerable to the right kind of attack." She brought up another display showing human fighters launching from their carriers. "We've modified our weapons to target their specific energy signature. The hive mind may be able to absorb consciousness, but let's see how they handle good old-fashioned human firepower." "You mean to kill them?" the head speaker asked, crystal form vibrating with distress. "Actually end their existence. They've already ended the existence of millions of your citizens," Thompson said bluntly. "Sometimes survival means making hard choices. Humanity learned that lesson through centuries of war. Now we can put that knowledge to use defending peace." James stepped forward. "Council members, I know this goes against everything you believe in. But right now, humanity's capacity for controlled violence might be the only thing standing between civilization and extinction." A new alert flashed across the screens. The hive mind had been spotted approaching one of the largest alien colonies in the sector. 500,000 beings lived there. "We're out of time for debate," Thompson announced. "That colony has no defenses, no weapons, no chance, unless we act now." The council chamber erupted in urgent discussions. James watched the tactical display as the human fleet moved into position. They had one chance to prove that humanity's primitive nature could be a force for good. "Council," the head speaker finally announced, "we grant the human fleet full authority to engage the enemy by whatever means necessary." Admiral Thompson nodded grimly. "All ships, battle stations, show these peaceful folks why humanity never forgot how to fight. And show that hive mind why they should have picked an easier galaxy to invade." The human warships powered up their weapons, ready to demonstrate that sometimes it takes a predator to stop a predator. The battle began at dawn. From the council station's observation deck, James watched the human fleet face the dark mass of the hive mind. The enemy had grown enormous, spreading across space like a living storm cloud. The peaceful colony below, home to 500,000 beings, had no idea they were about to become the testing ground for humanity's military might. "All ships, attack pattern Delta." Admiral Thompson's voice cracked through the command channel. "Remember your training. These things may be big, but everything that lives can die." The Thunder led the charge, its massive guns glowing with power. Behind it, smaller ships moved into formation, their designs shaped by centuries of human warfare. "What are they doing?" Counselor Blue asked, pressing close to the window. Her glow had strengthened, curiosity overtaking fear. "Watch," James said softly. The human fleet split into 3 groups. While the main force held the hive mind's attention, faster ships circled to the sides. The strategy was as old as warfare itself: divide and conquer. The hive mind reacted, sending dark tendrils toward the Thunder. But Thompson had expected this. "Now," she commanded. Multiple ships fired simultaneously. Their weapons weren't the gentle, stunning beams the Council used, but concentrated plasma bolts and gravity bombs, weapons designed to tear reality itself. Where they struck, the hive mind's mass began to break apart. The creature screamed, not with sound, but with pure mental energy that made everyone on the station wince. But the humans had prepared for this too. Their ship's crews wore special shields, protecting their minds from the hive mind's influence. "Look there," Representative Green pointed with a leaf-like appendage. The hive mind was trying to reform, but the human ships weren't giving it time. Fighter craft darted through the gaps in its mass, dropping charges that forced it to stay separated. "They're not just attacking," the head speaker observed, crystal forms sparkling with understanding. "They're teaching us about the enemy's weaknesses." James nodded. "Humanity's greatest strength isn't our weapons. It's our ability to understand how enemies think, how they fight, and how they can be defeated." On the main screen, Admiral Thompson coordinated the battle with deadly precision. When the hive mind tried to retreat, it found more ships waiting. When it attempted to dive toward the colony, defensive fire drove it back. "Target the central mass," Thompson ordered. "All ships, full power to forward guns. Fire on my mark." The human fleet's main guns aligned, gathering energy. The hive mind, sensing the danger, tried one last desperate attack. It launched thousands of smaller pieces of itself toward the ships, like a dark rain of death. "Steady," Thompson commanded. "Wait for it." The smaller creatures were almost at the fleet. Now, 30 beams of concentrated energy struck the hive mind's core simultaneously. The dark mass convulsed, its smaller parts freezing in space. For a moment, everything was still. Then the hive mind began to break apart, not healing this time, but dissolving into harmless particles that scattered across space. The smaller creatures followed, disappearing like smoke in the wind. The council chamber erupted in cheers. Species that had never witnessed combat before celebrated their first taste of victory. James watched as Counselor Blue's glow became brighter than he'd ever seen it. "The colony is safe," Thompson reported. "Enemy destroyed. No civilian casualties." The head speaker turned to James, their crystalline form vibrating with emotion. "Your people, they fought with precision, with strategy. This wasn't the mindless violence we feared. Humans learned long ago that controlled aggression is different from savage violence." James explained, "We fight so others don't have to. We remember the arts of war so that peace has a chance to flourish." Admiral Thompson's hologram appeared in the chamber. "This was just one battle," she warned. "The hive mind will adapt. Next time will be harder." "Then we'll adapt too," James said. "And this time, we'll teach our allies how to fight back." Looking at the peaceful species around him, James saw something new in their eyes. Not fear of humanity's warlike nature, but gratitude for it. Sometimes it took a warrior to protect the peaceful. The training center aboard the Thunder buzzed with unusual activity. 1 month after the first victory, Admiral Thompson stood before a strange mix of students. Representatives from 20 alien species had volunteered to learn humanity's art of war. "Harder," Thompson told a tall, crystalline being who was struggling with a weapon simulator. "You're not going to break it. Trust your instincts." The being, a younger member of the head speaker's race, adjusted their grip. This time, the target on the screen shattered. A small victory, but Thompson smiled. Every journey began with small steps. James watched from the observation deck, remembering how controversial this program had been. Teaching peaceful species to fight had seemed impossible just weeks ago. Now, necessity drove them all. "Their progress is unexpected," Counselor Blue said, floating beside him. Her species had been among the first to volunteer. "We thought we had evolved beyond the capacity for combat." "You didn't evolve beyond it," James replied. "You just forgot it. Every living thing knows how to fight when it needs to survive. Humans just never forgot the lessons." Below them, Thompson had moved on to strategy training. A holographic display showed the hive mind's attack patterns from previous encounters. The aliens studied it intently, their various forms clustered around the display. "See here," Thompson pointed. "They're learning from each defeat. The hive mind adapts its tactics, but so do we. That's the first rule of warfare. Know your enemy." Representative Green, who had once trembled at the thought of violence, now operated a battle simulator with surprising skill. Their leaf-like appendages moved with purpose, directing virtual ships against virtual enemies. "We're not teaching them to be violent," James explained to Blue. "We're teaching them to be strong. There's a difference." The training continued throughout the day. Some species learned to pilot fighters, their natural abilities giving them advantages humans never had. Others showed talent for strategy, their peaceful minds finding new ways to approach combat. "The hive mind attacked 3 more colonies while we train," one of the alien students said during a break. "But this time, we were ready. The human fleet wasn't alone." Thompson nodded with pride. "Your people fought well. Those colonies still stand because you remembered how to defend them." The afternoon session focused on ground combat. Even species without solid forms learned to use their natural abilities as weapons. Blue's people discovered their light patterns could blind and confuse the hive mind's drones. The crystalline beings found they could focus energy through their forms, creating powerful beams. "Each species brings something unique to the fight," Thompson told James later. "They're not becoming more human. They're becoming stronger versions of themselves." In the medical bay, doctors from Earth worked with alien healers, teaching them the difference between healing peace and healing warriors. The distinction was important. Combat required different types of care. "We never wanted this knowledge," one of the alien medics admitted. "But now we understand why humans kept it alive. Peace isn't just about being peaceful. Sometimes it's about being strong enough to defend peace." As the day ended, James attended a council session. The chamber felt different now. Species that once debated for days now made quick, decisive choices. They had learned that sometimes action must come before discussion. "The hive mind is changing its tactics," the head speaker announced. "They avoid direct confrontation with trained colonies. They know we can fight back." "Good," Thompson said from her hologram. "Fear is a weapon too. Every time they retreat, we grow stronger. Every day we train, more colonies learn to defend themselves." James looked around the chamber at species he had once thought too peaceful to survive. Now he saw warriors in training, protectors learning to guard their own. Humanity hadn't just brought weapons to the galaxy. They had brought the wisdom of knowing when and how to use them. "Tomorrow," Thompson announced, "we start fleet exercises. It's time to take the fight to them." The council chamber, once a place of endless debate, now rang with sounds of preparation for war. Not because they had abandoned peace, but because they had finally learned how to protect it. The combined fleet hung in space like a metal galaxy. Over 200 ships, human vessels mixed with newly armed alien craft, waited for Admiral Thompson's command. This was the largest military force assembled in the galaxy's history. "Scout ships report the hive mind's main nest located," Thompson announced from the Thunder's Bridge. "They've gathered in the ruins of Colony 7. James stood beside her, watching tactical displays light up with enemy positions. The hive mind had grown enormous, but it had also grown desperate. Their training program had turned the tide. More colonies now fought back successfully. "All ships report ready." Blue's voice came through the comm. Her ship, formed of living light, led a squadron of her people's newly created warships. They had learned to turn their natural glow into powerful energy weapons. Representative Green commanded another wing, their vessels resembling great space-faring trees armed with bioweapons their species had developed. The head speaker's crystalline ships formed the fleet's backbone, their structures perfect for focusing energy into devastating beams. "Remember your training," Thompson said to all ships. "Fight smart. Fight together. The hive mind may be strong, but we are stronger united." The fleet moved forward, dropping out of faster-than-light travel near Colony 7. The sight shocked them all. The hive mind had transformed the entire colony into a massive living fortress. Dark tendrils whipped through space like angry serpents. By the stars, someone whispered over the comm. "Stay focused," Thompson ordered. "Battle formation Delta. Humans take point. Alien squadrons provide coverage. Remember the plan." The hive mind struck first, launching thousands of smaller versions of itself toward the fleet. But this time, they'd met prepared defenders. Green's ships released clouds of engineered spores that broke down the creature's structure. Blue's squadron flashed with blinding light, disrupting their coordination. "Main force, advance," Thompson commanded. The Thunder led the charge, its guns blazing. Human ships opened corridors through the hive mind's defenses, allowing specialized alien vessels to strike at vital points. The battle raged for hours. The hive mind fought with the fury of a cornered animal, but the defenders had learned too well. When it tried to adapt, it faced new tactics. When it attempted to retreat, it found all escape routes blocked. "Energy spike," James called out suddenly. "They're trying something new." The hive mind center began to pulse with dark energy. It was attempting to transform itself into something even larger, more terrible. "Not this time," Thompson said grimly. "All ships, execute Protocol Omega." This was the moment they had trained for. Each species played its part in a complex battle plan. The crystalline ships formed a massive lens in space, focusing energy. Blue's people created a network of light, trapping the hive mind's mass. Green's vessels released special particles that disrupted the enemy's ability to reform. "Human ships, prepare main guns," Thompson ordered. "Channel your fire through the crystal lens. All other ships, hold positions." The Thunder's engines roared as it lined up the shot. Around it, every human vessel did the same. This was why humans led the attack. Only they had the experience to know exactly how much force to use, when to strike, and where to hit. Fire. The combined energy of 30 human warships struck the crystal lens. The lens focused it, turning the beam into a blade of pure power. Blue's light network contained the blast, directing it straight into the hive mind's core. For a moment, space itself seemed to hold its breath. Then the hive mind's fortress began to crack. Light poured from the breaks, then the whole structure started to collapse. The smaller creatures fell apart, their connection to the main mind broken. "Hold positions," Thompson commanded. "Wait for confirmation." Everyone watched as the hive mind's remains scattered into space. Sensors scanned for any sign of its energy signature. "Target destroyed," the sensor officer reported after long minutes. No trace of hive mind activity remaining. The fleet erupted in cheers. Species that had never fought before celebrated their first major victory. They had done it. Together. James looked at Thompson, who allowed herself a small smile. "The students have become warriors," she said quietly. "No," James corrected her. "They've become protectors. Just like us." 3 months after the final battle, the Galactic Council chamber looked very different. Combat simulators now stood alongside diplomatic stations. Training areas occupied spaces that once held only meditation rooms. But the biggest change was in the beings who gathered there. James stood at his usual spot by the window, watching ships patrol the space around the station. Human vessels flew alongside alien craft, all part of the new defense fleet. The sight still amazed him. Peaceful species now carried weapons, but they hadn't lost their gentleness. "Thinking deep thoughts, Ambassador?" Admiral Thompson asked, joining him at the window. She wore a new uniform, marking her position as commander of the combined fleet. "Remember when they thought we were too violent to trust?" James smiled. "Now they want us to teach at their academies." The chamber filled for the day's session. The head speaker's crystal form had changed, now containing focused points that could channel energy if needed. They had learned to be both peaceful and strong. "The Council recognizes Earth's delegation," the head speaker announced. "Admiral Thompson, please present your report." Thompson stepped forward, her hologram appearing in the center of the chamber. The defense fleet is fully operational. 27 species now maintain their own combat-ready squadrons. All major colonies have protective forces in place. And what of the newer species joining the Council? Counselor Blue asked. Her glow was steady now, controlled. She had become one of their best tactical instructors. Each new member receives basic defense training, Thompson replied. We teach them that keeping peace sometimes requires strength. Representative Green, whose people once trembled at the thought of conflict, now led the Council's Strategic Defense Committee. We have learned much from our human friends, they said. Not just about fighting, but about balance. James remembered the early days, when the Council feared that learning combat would make them lose their peaceful nature. Instead, they had found a deeper peace, one born of confidence rather than fear. The galaxy has changed, the head speaker said. We once thought evolution meant moving beyond the capacity for violence. The humans showed us that true evolution means learning when to use force and when to show mercy. Thompson nodded. My people had to learn that lesson too. For centuries, we fought each other, but we learned to channel our aggressive instincts into protection rather than destruction. The Council chamber's screen showed images from across the galaxy. New defense academies where humans taught alongside aliens. Peaceful species learning to protect themselves while maintaining their gentle nature. Combat training centers that emphasized control and wisdom alongside strength. We propose a new division of the Council, the head speaker announced. The Department of Galactic Defense, led jointly by humanity and the member species, not to wage war, but to preserve peace through strength. The vote was unanimous. James felt pride swell in his chest. Humanity had finally found its role in the galaxy, not as warriors, but as teachers and protectors. There will be new threats, Thompson warned. The galaxy is vast and full of dangers, and we will face them together, Blue replied, her glow confident and strong. The humans taught us that being peaceful doesn't mean being helpless. As the session ended, James walked through the station's halls. He passed training rooms where once peaceful species practiced defense alongside human instructors. In the dining hall, warriors and diplomats ate together, sharing stories and wisdom. You know what the best part is, Thompson said, joining him for a final look out the window. We learned from them too. Their patience, their desire for harmony. It's made us better. James watched a group of young aliens practicing battle formations in space. Their movements were precise but not aggressive, powerful but controlled. They had found the balance that humanity had taken centuries to achieve. We're not the bloodthirsty humans anymore, he said quietly. No, Thompson agreed. We're the teachers, the protectors, the ones who remember so others can live in peace. And that's a much better story. Outside, the galaxy spun on, now watched over by species that understood both peace and strength. The humans had taught them to fight, but more importantly, they had taught them why to fight. Not for glory or power, but for the right to remain peaceful in a dangerous universe.